Gain the latest news from our experts in the field straight to your hands. Sign up for our weekly tech service where we provide quick and to-the-point videos, shot on site to help you plan your planting date, know when to scout and which diseases are present in your area, become aware of upcoming tech and new seed options, precisely time fungicide, insecticide, and chemical application for best financial returns, and much more. Every choice you make as a farmer matters on the field. With more information on hand, the better agronomic decisions you can make, keeping your ROI high, yield strong, and soil healthy for the long haul. Sign up is free and easy. Simply text the word JOIN to 844-843-9247. Cancel anytime by texting the word STOP. It's just that easy. No spam, just helpful information shared once a week. Stay in the know with Liqui-Grow.
I'm Rob Axon. I've been here 28 years. I'm the parts manager here at the West Liberty location. Here at this location, we work on farm equipment, whole goods sales, precision farming, parts, service, and retail. JJ Nicottine's been in business since 1920, and we have 5 locations. Our other locations are Pilot Grove, Mount Pleasant, Sigourney, and Grinnell. One of the unique things about JJ Nicotine is we focus mainly on our Case brand. We are standing in the Walt Lehman showroom, which is unique to West Liberty. The sole purpose of this space is for the community to use it for ag events. And they do this free of charge, as it's JJ Nicotine's way of giving back to the community. Walt Lehman was a very respected farmer and World War II veteran who sold JJ Nicotine the property to build this building on. The West Liberty location was built in 2021 and we moved in September of that year. The best part about working for JJ Nicotine is they're open, transparent, they do a lot for the community, and I feel they really value their employees.
Hi, I'm Christopher Tinsman, Innovation Lead here at Twin State Liqui-Grow.
And I'm Jake Vossenkemper, Director of Agronomy and Research at Liqui-Grow.
Thanks for joining us today for our Lead Academy. If you missed any of our other videos, feel free to go back to our Facebook page or find them on our YouTube channel. Today's topic is Exactstrips and how much it can benefit your crops. But before we start that, I'd like to invite all of you to one of our 3 in-person Lead Academies that we're having throughout Iowa. If you want any more information on that, feel free to reach out to your local Liqui-Grow sales rep or find it and RSVP for it at www.liqui-grow.com. So for today's topic, we're talking about Exactstrips and why placing fertilizer, banded fertilizer, so close to the crop and how it can be beneficial to your plants. As always, if you ever have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, or you can email your questions to questions@liqui-grow.com.
And we're not going to ask you to donate any money, but we are going to ask you to like and subscribe, so that way when we do new videos, it'll come up in your YouTube thingy. Appreciate it. See you afterwards.
Hi, I'm Chris Tinsman, Innovation Lead for Twin State Liqui-Grow.
Hi, I'm Jake Vossenkemper, Director of Agronomy and Research at Liqui-Grow.
And today we're going to be talking about Exactstrips. We've both been working on the project for about 3 years now.
It's been the longest 3 years of my life.
We recently launched it in summer of 2022, but the story sort of starts before that.
Absolutely.
It starts with you sort of finding some research articles, but then also doing your own research beforehand on strip till work.
Yeah, Chris. I mean, I have a whole bunch of data today that I could share, but I really just want to make the point that there's multiple lines of evidence, as I've been doing these research plots since 2015 here at Twin State Liqui-Grow, of why we ought to be doing the Exactstrip technology and application placement and method.
And this video is going to be a little bit more telling the story about how we came to Exactstrips. If you want something that's more detailed and science-oriented, feel free to click on the link below. Again, it's going to be Dr. Jake Vossenkemper presenting that data as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I often get very technical, and for those of you who have watched my videos in the past, I can get down to the nitty-gritty about why exactly, banding nutrients can be very important. We're going to skip over that, like you said, and more tell the story about Exactstrips. So, where did it all begin, Chris? It all began because I had a number of salesmen and a number of farmers who wanted to know how subsurface applying nutrients, like you would do in a strip till operation, compared to our 15-inch dribble band. That's really where it all started. So, in the very beginning, I partnered with a customer of ours, or potential customer of ours, down near Joy, Illinois. Okay, so at the time, he was paying someone to custom strip till nutrients. Okay, and he wanted to know, is the yield worth the cost I'm paying to have this custom done? Okay. Well, I had just got a strip till bar. I have a better one now, but at the time I had just got my original strip till bar, so I had the research equipment to help this farmer answer his question. Okay. So what we did is we had an experiment on his farm. This is a strip trial, so strips all the way across the field. I came and applied all the nutrients. I actually planted the trial too, but then he harvested the trial, we weighed everything, had it on his yield monitor, so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, without getting into all the details, what we found is that the 15-inch dribble band yielded about 4 bushel more than the dry broadcast, all these at the same rates. Okay, so that's good. The 15-inch dribble band, which is what we do on a lot of acres, yielded more than the dry broadcast, which is also what I see a lot. But the subsurface injected nutrients yielded quite a bit more than the 15-inch dribble band in this case, roughly about 9 bushel. Okay, so in that example, that was kind of my first indication that yes, 15-inch dribble band is good, but maybe planting back into a band of nutrients that's concentrated on a 30-inch row is even better.
And obviously, a lot of the technology has changed. This isn't the strip till days of the 90s anymore. There's been great improvement not only on the equipment side, but also on the technology side of trying to get that strip till exactly where you want it.
And the guidance side, which is what you're alluding to, which is really pivotal and important to our Exactstrip technology, which we'll get into in a little bit.
Right.
All right, so kind of line of evidence number one. Okay. So also here at Liqui-Grow, obviously we sell quite a bit of starter fertilizer, so I'm responsible for the further development of that starter fertilizer. So I have a study that I've called my balanced nutrition study. And I'm not going to get into all the details about what that study entails, but there's really one thing I want to talk about and show. When you apply N, P, K, sulfur, zinc together with the planter, there was a 15.7 bushel yield increase over no fertilizer except for N. So 15.7 bushel yield increase when you planter apply those nutrients. And then there was about roughly a little over a 10 bushel yield increase versus broadcasting those same nutrients. So that tells us that banding those nutrients with the planter, like I said, there's roughly about a 10 bushel yield increase.
So there is evidence there showing that there's some intermingling with the importance of putting all the nutrients together in the same band.
Absolutely.
But Jake, you must have been applying 80 gallons an acre with the planter.
Yeah, so Chris, that's the problem. I mean, in one eye you would say, well, why isn't everybody doing that? Well, the problem is it's logistically complicated. To your point, to do that with a clear solution, I had to apply about 86 gallons to the acre to do that.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, and I can do that on small plots, but a farmer, that's just not practical, right? Yeah. Now, if I use the suspension, I might be able to get down to around 35 or 40 gallons and get that same nutrient. But then that adds a whole nother complexity and if you're going to try to apply suspension fertilizer as a planter. It's a whole nother thing that we're not going to get into, but it can be done, it's just difficult, okay? So line of evidence number 2, when we apply a high rate of nutrients with the planter close to the row, we get a big yield increase over broadcasting. We also see this in some university data. This is a University of Wisconsin study, multi-year, multi-location study, a blended NPK fertilizer injected in the soil, yielded roughly about 12 bushel greater than broadcasting those same rate of nutrients. So, you know, I have my own research, but I'm always looking for other independent research to confirm or refute what I'm seeing, okay? Here's another study. Again, I don't want to get into the details, but this is another study that really pushes me to the importance of applying these nutrients where the crop's going to be planted. So this happens to be another starter fertilizer study, okay? In this case, by applying 60 pounds of N, only 10 pounds of P, only 10 pounds of K, only 10 pounds of sulfur, and a half a pound of zinc in this multi-location study in 2022, there was a 34 bushel yield increase relative to broadcasting 180 pounds of N. 34 bushels, Chris. And again, this is a starter. This is a high rate out of furrow starter application. So more evidence that applying a good rate of fertilizer, you know, close to where the row is going to be planted can really increase yields. Okay? How many gallons do you think?
Gosh, I bet nearly 30.
Yeah, well, it was about 32 gallons to achieve that.
Okay.
So again, more practical. But if you farm a lot of acres, you better have a full-time person tendering you.
But definitely not that 624.6, you know, 3 gallons or 5 gallons an acre.
You're not going to get this. You're not going to get this 34 bushel yield increase I'm talking about by applying 6 gallons of 624.6 in furrow. Not that that doesn't have its place, but you're not going to get that by doing what we're talking about here. Okay. So there's another study. Now we're going to kind of transition to starter fertilizer, as you kind of reflect on. So this study here is what they call a meta-analysis. So a student, PhD student at the University of Kentucky did something we call a meta-analysis. So he took all the starter studies he could find in the U.S. and put them all together, and he wanted to answer the question, you know, how much could I expect starter fertilizer to increase my yields on average? Now what I'm going to mention here, some of it was in furrow, some of it was out of furrow, but starter fertilizer is a big giant category. What he concluded is that there was about a 5.2 bushel yield increase for applying starter fertilizer in corn production in the United States of America on average, okay? And 5.2 bushel at 200 bushel yield levels, that's about 10 bushel. So more lines of evidence that would support what I see in my research, and more lines of evidence that we need to be putting a high concentration of nutrients very close to where we're going to plant. Make sense?
Makes sense.
So finally, I show this study by the University of Illinois. Okay? Again, a multi-year, multi-location study. And finally, this study here shows a very similar thing to what we've been talking about. This is another subsurface injection study, and not only is subsurface injecting nutrients better than broadcasting the nutrients at the same rate, but we see that the yield increase goes up the closer you get to where the future row is going to be planted. So
now we're throwing a distance aspect.
Now we're throwing a distance aspect in there too. So what we know so far, banding those nutrients is good, particularly when it's a co-mingled nutrient. So when you have N, P, K, sulfur, zinc in there together, and then distance can be important, okay? And there's multiple lines of evidence that I have done research on. There's multiple lines of evidence from university folks.
So Jake, if I'm understanding correctly, sort of summarizing what you just spoke about, so we want to put nutrients in a nice consistent band a small distance away from where the plant is going to be.
Yeah, I'm telling you that I see in my studies and other independent university studies that applying a high concentration of nutrients where the crop's going to end up being planted is going to increase your yields over broadcasting those nutrients.
But Jake, what are some of those problems, right? You know, what have you and I had to think about? We had to think about cost of what the farmer or the grower might have to contribute, the logistic headaches, the labor and time shortages. Farmers only have so much time in the fall and in the spring to get the work that they need to get done. Now they have to worry about also putting fertilizer down with a very expensive strip till bar that they might have to go out and purchase. And at the same time, some of our competition is offering strip till bars at anywhere between 25 to 35 bucks an acre.
Yeah, custom strip till application, yeah. Well, I've been beating my head against the wall for several years trying to convince people to put on 30 to 40 gallons of stuff with their planter, but no one's listening. So,
right.
No, for real. I mean, we've thought a lot about how we can make what I see in the research more practical.
Right. And with that is when we announced this study or started doing a lot more research on what we call now Exactstrips.
Yeah.
Right? Exactstrips is going to be this idea of sharing RTK guidance lines between the growers, planter or strip till bar, and our floaters. This allows the seed to operate a lot closer to that nutrient band of fertilizer, hopefully seeing that yield increase.
Absolutely.
And this is sort of the end results that we found. But Jake, why don't you sort of talk about some of the research that were done before we launched it to the public?
Yeah, Chris, so no different than all the other lines of evidence I spoke about today. You know, you and I had to partner together to see if we could make what I'm seeing in these small plots practical, you know, on a commercial perspective, right? So you did a lot of the studies where we partnered with farmers and you did some measuring and selecting of different nozzles and things to figure out, you know, okay, what's the best approach to the physical application of getting that fertilizer band to where the crop's going to be planted, right? But then I had to answer the question on the backside, you know, how close do we need to be, okay? And no different than a lot of the other studies that I've seen that suggest we need to be planting the crop in a close association to where we put the fertilizer. You know, I did some more small plot research, and what we found is that, you know, generally speaking, the closer we apply that suspension fertilizer to zero or where the crop is going to be planted, the higher the yields went. Similar to all the other evidence that I've talked about today, right? So this tells us, and it's more evidence that we need to be planting closer to where, we need to be planting that crop closer to where the nutrients are.
Again, Jake, what we're showing right now is all on top of the ground. This isn't incorporated.
Mostly, correct. So in the figure that we have up here behind us, these are the studies where, you know, it further confirmed my thoughts that clearly as we plant, you know, in this study we applied suspension fertilizer bands 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15 inches from where the future crop was going to be planted, and we had a broadcast treatment, okay? And like a lot of my other studies suggested, and the University of Illinois study we just looked at, the closer we planted that crop to where that fertilizer is applied, generally speaking, the higher the yields went.
Come on, Jake. I know you better than that. I'm sure your questions did not stop there.
Well, my questions did not stop there at just Exactstrip, but either did our customers and our retail salesmen. So we have this technology called Exactstrip, but there's a lot of other questions that are revolving around what's the best management practices to doing it.
Yeah,
right?
For example, whether or not this should be before or after tillage, whether or not it should be fall or spring applied.
Absolutely. Those have been two of the major questions. Okay, so now I'm moving on to answer those questions. And you're going to have to bear with me a little bit and give me a little bit of time, but I will get these questions answered. That's what I'm good at. So we started those trials in 2022, and again, we're going to get a little bit technical now because I need to go over some trials. And I really want to talk about two treatments in this study. Okay, so in this study we applied 100 pounds of potash per acre. The yield increases you're seeing here are relative to broadcasting that same 100 pounds of potassium. So in every case, when we banded potassium, we saw yield increases over broadcasting. All right. One of the treatments was the Exactstrip application. Okay, so we applied the 100 pounds of potassium on the soil surface like we do with our floater. Then we used the strip till bar to incorporate that 100 pounds of potassium. Okay, and that gave us an 8.6 bushel yield increase over broadcasting that same 100 pounds of potassium. The other treatment I want to make reference to here in this study is we injected that potassium 6 to 7 inches deep, and that increased yields about 6.6 bushels per acre. Now, 6.6 and 8.6 are both yield increases, and they're not statistically different in this study. But at the end of the day, what this study at 3 locations tells me in 2022 is that applying that 100 pounds of potassium and then incorporating it with the strip till bar would be the same as injecting it 6 to 7 inches deep, roughly, okay? More to come on all this, Chris. This is 1 year. Yes, it's 3 locations, but I'll likely repeat this study for a couple more years to come, and then we'll have a really, really solid answer on where this is going, okay? Okay, Chris, so I have another study that is similar to the last one, but now we're talking about the nitrogen that's in the ammonium polyphosphate, so roughly 21 pounds of nitrogen, 50 pounds of phosphorus, 75 pounds of K, 15 pounds of sulfur, and a half a pound of zinc. So more of a fertilizer application that a farmer might do in the real world, you know, this maintenance type fertilizer application you might apply in the fall or maybe the spring, okay? Now, I hesitated even showing this figure. You know me, right? I don't like to show one location anywhere because, you know, it just isn't, you need more evidence to really get a good idea what's happening.
So much variety.
Well, you need to sample lots of soils and environments to get a good idea of what might happen on average. But I think it's okay to talk about this study and what we found as long as we all understand it's one location, and I'll continue to do this research, okay? But what we found at the Walnut, Illinois site in 2022, we had several treatments I want to talk about. We had a broadcast treatment where that fertilizer was broadcast applied. We had a Exactstrip treatment incorporated. So in that case, we would have applied the fertilizer in a band like we do with the floater. Then we hit it with a strip till bar and incorporated it, okay? We had base of the knife applied 6 to 7 inches deep. Now that would emulate what a farmer would do with an actual strip till application. So we injected that fertilizer 6 to 7 inches deep, okay? We had an Exactstrip surface applied. So in that case, we made the strip till berm, and then we blew that fertilizer on top of that strip till berm. And then we had base plus 2 inches above the base. When I say base, I'm referencing the base of the knife, so the bottom of that strip till knife. So we applied half the fertilizer at the base of that strip till knife, and then the other half we applied 2 inches, 4 inches, or 6 inches above that knife. So what I was doing is I was distributing that fertilizer up and down that entire, you know, where that knife was running, that entire length of where that knife was running in the ground, okay? And the good news is, again, regardless of how you banded the nutrients, it was all better than broadcast. So that's good. That goes back to what I've been talking about this entire time. But it does differ to some extent, you know, regarding how you banded those nutrients. So we actually see that the Exactstrip surface applied again. So in that case, what we did is we made the strip till berm and then we placed that fertilizer on top of that strip. That yielded every bit as much as injecting the fertilizer 6 to 7 inches deep. Actually yielded more, about 4 or 5 bushel or so, okay? The best treatment was when we injected that fertilizer at the bottom of that knife and distributed up and down the back of that knife, okay? And that yielded about 263, so a few bushel better than that surface applied fertilizer on top of the strip till berm, all right? So at the end of the day, what this tells me is that, again, that this Exactstrip method of application is getting some of the yield increases, if not all of the yield increases that I've seen, you know, when I apply a high rate of nutrients on the planter or when you actually strip till nutrients 6 to 7 inches deep in the ground.
But again, Jake, on this slide or this study, this was only 1 year, 1 location.
1 year, 1 location.
So nothing set in stone yet.
Nothing set in stone. I will continue to do these studies, probably replicate that study at all 3 sites next year, and I am determined to help answer the questions that need to be answered regarding, you know, what are the best management practices that need to revolve around
doing this
Exactstrip application. Absolutely. Yep. Okay, so last study I want to talk about today. Okay, now this is at 3 sites, so you know, a little more confidence in this. But I've been getting the question, well, can we do this in the spring? Okay, can we do the Exactstrip application in the spring? And you know, Chris, you know full well what some of the logistical problems are with doing this in the spring. The logistical problems are, the truth is, you know, it may or may not get done. I mean, that's the truth.
I mean, staying in front of the planter would be the most important thing. And even then, our guys are already worried about finishing up or starting nitrogen, starting burn downs. So our guys are also bogged down.
There's a lot of pressure on farmers and our retail locations to get stuff done in the spring. So, you know, logistically, it'll be way more complicated. But the second thing that concerns me is injury, okay? We have to be careful when you are planting a crop back into a highly concentrated band of nutrients like we're doing here, okay? And I full well know that, trust me. And my gut says that we probably need to treat this like a band of anhydrous ammonia, for example. You know, we know that we need to wait 12 to 14 days to plant corn after putting on anhydrous ammonia, okay? And that's kind of what I've been telling our guys. I've been telling our guys, you know, yes, you can do this in the spring, but time, soil moisture, and precipitation is your friend. You need some time to dilute these fertilizers. The concentration of salt will be diluted in soil moisture. So that's going to happen with time, soil moisture, and rainfall, okay? So it will be okay, it can be done, but there needs to be some time elapsed between when the fertilizer is applied and when planting occurs. So what did I do, Chris? I did a study to help answer this question, okay? So this is actually, I really want to focus on the non-cover crop treatment. So we did this with and without cereal rye cover crop, okay? But what we did is when we got to these locations, when we got to our locations, we got the strip till bar hooked up, we got it going, and we surface applied fertilizer like we would do with one of our floaters, okay? Then we went about our business and planted the rest of the location, did all the other treatments, and that typically takes us about a good week or more to do that at any given location, okay? So the last thing we did before we left, we again applied another band of fertilizer on the soil surface, and then we planted that trowel immediately. So what we ended up with is we ended up with a fall applied Exactstrip treatment. I didn't add that, but we applied the same rate of nutrients in the fall. We applied those same rate of nutrients again in the spring, 7 to 10 days before we planted, and then we applied that same rate of nutrients the day we planted.
And Jake, it looks like, I mean, you saw quite a bit of injury from that salt level when you planted the same day that fertilizer was put down.
Yeah, I mean, we had about a 7 bushel or so yield reduction to planting the day we applied the fertilizer versus waiting 7 to 10 days, okay? So this is what I thought we might find, is that if you plant right back into this band of nutrients, it's likely you're going to see injury. Now, I physically did not see that much injury in the field, but the yield data clearly shows that we did reduce yield some. And the cover crop treatment also suggests that same trend exists. The only thing different is the fall treatment was quite a bit worse, somewhat worse than either the Exactstrip the day of planting or the Exactstrip applied 7 to 10 days before planting. But that's likely because that cover crop took up, you know, some amount of the sulfur and the nitrogen and the P and K that was applied in the fall. Okay?
So if this is something a customer is interested in, let's do it in the fall, or let's make sure it gets done early spring.
Absolutely.
So Jake, as we finished up some of the studies that you found on the small plot side, I think it's only important to talk about how you can do this across hundreds of acres and the tools that the farmer might need if this is something that they're interested in. So if you're interested in Exactstrip, I think the first thing to do is to reach out to your local tractor dealership. They have a great set of hands and teams that can assist you with some of these questions. And there's a couple differences in GPS options. Most farmers are currently working with WASP, which is about 3-foot accuracy.
At least that's what comes freely available on your equipment.
That's right. That's what your tractor rolls off the factory line with. But getting it down to the RTK is highly important because RTK, the sales pitch is year after year, pass after pass with sub-inch accuracy.
And that's reality.
And that's what we're looking for too. And that's exactly what we did on our machines. That we were able to put RTK on some of our liquid floaters so that when we put our nutrient band out there, we know exactly with sub-inch accuracy where that nutrient band is going to be.
And Chris, you did a bunch of measurements in field scale situations about how far we can be from where we're going to plant. How far can we be?
And that's exactly right. So what we did is we followed strip till bars, and we averaged throughout the field to be only 2.5 inches away. So although we might not be at zero, we're definitely on that upward trend. So the final part is communication. Making sure that we know exactly where that seed is going to be planted and sharing that guidance lines back and forth between the customer and that applicator. And Jake, we can achieve all of that. If you have more questions, feel free to reach out to your local Liqui-Grow salesman, and maybe I'll end up on your farm, and possibly even Jake.
Absolutely.
So thanks for tuning in, and we'll take questions at this time.
Lead Academy.
Liqui-Grow
Excellence.
And agronomy.
development.
Hi, thanks for watching the program, and we've been watching it as well, and it looks like we do have a handful of questions that were asked during it. So I think we're going to start diving right in, and we're going to start with a somewhat easier one. Do all of the locations offer Exactstrips? At this point, all of our locations can offer Exactstrips. Not every single machine that we have right now is equipped with the RTK, but in order to get set up, it takes roughly 2 or 3 days to get set up. So if you are at one of the locations that doesn't have it turned on, that doesn't mean that they can't easily turn it on and have it ready for fall time fertilizer. Another question that we have is, what do I have to do to be able to do Exactstrips? So yeah, what Liqui-Grow recommends, or what I recommend, is the fact that you have to be set up with RTK. RTK isn't required, but it is what we prefer. RTK is just that sub-inch year-to-year accuracy that we're looking for. So that way when we get out to the field and we start following the farmer's line, that we know exactly where we're supposed to be, and that we can almost be guaranteed to be within that inch. Let's see what else we got. I have a strip till bar. Are you saying that I should run my bar and you're going to run over my ground? Isn't that defeating the purpose of less passes across the ground?
You gonna take that one, Chris?
Yeah, you can take that one, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can look at it that way, but one of the major concerns / complaints, so I'm to the point now where I talk to lots of farmers, some are customers, some not our customers, get out in the field quite a bit, and I've had guys tell me I used to strip till, I used to subsurface inject my nutrients. In a lot of cases I seen the yield benefit, but as I grew, I couldn't manage the logistics. I couldn't get it done, right? Yeah. So, if you can handle the logistics and you can get it done, great. I mean, I've clearly showed in my research that that's a good approach. But I think a lot of the times, part of the thing that holds a grower back from maybe going to strip tillage, for example, is managing all the logistics. Or maybe that's why a grower used to be a strip tiller and went away from it, because of managing the logistics. So if you let us apply the fertilizer and you just go strip and get it done, as soon as you get done combining, there's a good chance you're going to get it done in the fall and or finish it up in the spring. If you have to manage all the logistics between us and you getting the fertilizer or any other retailer, that just complicates everything. And it might take a lot longer to get the job done if you get it done, right? The other issue is by us applying the fertilizer, you would drastically reduce the upfront cost. So if you want to get into strip tillage, now you don't have to have a tank, you don't have to have the plumbing, you don't have to have the hoses, you don't have to have the monitoring equipment. If you're dry fertilizer, you can say the same thing. You don't have to have all the tanks, all the monitoring equipment. It's a lot easier to get in the game from a financial perspective because you didn't have to make that upfront investment. Right. So, I mean, there's reasons why you may want to do it yourself, but there's also reasons why it may just not be for you, and this would help with all those logistical struggles that many farmers tell me they have with strip tillage.
Right. And I think it's also important to say that we don't have to follow strip till bar. We can go out and apply fertilizer on any sort of line, whether or not there is a berm or sections of dirt that we're trying to follow.
Yeah, so a no-tiller, for example,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so, we can do this with a no-tiller. We can do this with a, let's say that you hit your corn ground with a one-pass tool in the fall, and then maybe you plant corn back in that again. We can go out there and apply these Exactstrip bands after you do your one-pass tool pass, right? I mean, so we can do this with limited tillage. The one place that's not going to be, we're not going to be able to do it is if you chisel in the fall. We can't run over chiseled ground with these Exactstrips because the applicators would quit probably, and it would tear the heck out of the equipment. And number 3, you're not going to get the strips applied where you're going to plant because they're going to be bouncing all over the place.
So let's see what else we got. Who enters the lines? Okay, that's a great question. For the most part, we are the ones, Twin State Liqui-Grow is the ones that are always playing with the lines, but it's extremely important to communicate, whether or not it's to me or one of the salesmen, to say, hey, this is what you're supposed to be following. This is the line that I'm going to be planting on. That's the most important part. But from there, we take the lines, we convert it to what we need it to be. So when it comes down to what the farmer's going to do, all he has to do is enter the field and drive the line like he's always has. There's no extra passes or playing around or nudging the line that the farmer's going to have to do on his side. Is this just for P&K? At the moment, that's what we're promoting. We've been focusing on P&K. Technically, yes, it is possible to also be applying sulfur or nitrogen with strip tillage or with Exactstrips, but I think for most of our customers, they're applying a burn down treatment when they're doing that early spring nitrogen. So that's where I wouldn't necessarily recommend putting chemicals down in a Exactstrip band.
Right, and Chris, so I think the question's getting, can you put on UAN nitrogen with this Exactstrip and the P&K and the sulfur in the spring? And the answer is technically, but I get really concerned about injury, and I talked about that in the video at length. So there's a lot of concern about injury. I think I need to do some more research to understand how real that is or how long we need to wait before we go plant. There's also the logistical crunch in the spring for us and for the farmers. So I don't think we're there yet. I think that we need to answer more questions before we can, recommend a practice such as that. And it's mainly because of the injury potential. When you start putting 100 pounds of K, 20 pounds of sulfur, maybe 130, 140 pounds of UAN, there is a lot of salt that has to be diluted and diffused in the soil to reduce injury potential.
Right. It looks like I recently purchased FS3. I wasn't planning on upgrading to RTK because it was a newer purchase. Would FS3 work? Yeah, so FS3 would be a John Deere receiver. FS3 I think has error rate of 1.5 inches, which is still extremely good. The reason why some people might go with a different pass or a different guidance system besides RTK is if they're farming a lot of hilltops along forest or tree lines and in valleys. All these companies and equipment providers have started coming out with new guidance systems that are based off of satellite positions, and the satellite positions is no longer the 3 foot. It's much more narrow than that. FS3 is something that we can still follow. Hell, I mean, we can even follow the WASP 3 foot accuracy. The key is that we're going from sub-inch accurate to 1.5 inch accuracy. So as long as you, the farmer, is comfortable with that extra 1/2 inch being inside there and affecting our placement, then that's something that we're possible to follow and that we can apply on. And it looks like the last question the last question is, do you see this becoming a new style of strip till for the future? I guess I'll start and I'll say no. I don't think our goal is to replace strip tillage. As Jake was sort of saying in the video that you just watched, it was strip tillage is still a great option. But what happens as less and less people are coming back to the farm community, or your farm is growing in acreage? How do you keep up with that growing farm size? And I think this is a great option that we're offering at a very reasonable price to get out and go across all your acreage and have the accuracy of a strip tillage. But in terms of replacement, that's not my goal.
No.
So it looks like we might have no. So that is all the questions that we have for today. Thank you for joining us. We hope that you enjoy it. We have 3 more programs over the next couple days. They all start at 9 a.m. And again, that's going to be tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday morning. So hopefully we'll see you tomorrow, and thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for watching.